also sort of a fun thing I thought of doing, which is now that it seems to be coming to a close, the top 10 George Santos moments. So these are, in my opinion, the top 10 either funniest things that have involved him or just most interesting things he's talked about or just anything like that. So before we start, I think it's important to emphasize I don't think he's admitted to a lot of these. So these are alleged. These are from other. I quoted all the sources I got these from. So it's not just me saying this. This is where I got from these anyway. But I thought it'd be fun to show them since some of these I feel like even though he hasn't admitted to them, there's not a whole lot of debate around them about if they're lies or if they're mistruths or whatever. So let's just get into them. These are the top 10. So and as I mentioned, I had a source for these. All of them were from the Intelligencer. That's a hard name to say unless otherwise stated. So in case you were wondering what my source was for these, that's what they are. And yeah, so there are a few sources, like I mentioned. We'll be getting into those as well. But let's start all the way down here at the bottom with number 10. And ironically enough, this is from something other than Intelligencer. So we are kind of skipping over my rule, or not rule, but the pattern I noted there. This one doesn't have that. So according to City and State New York, Santos allegedly told potential donors he was a producer of the Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark, which is some musical, I guess, involving Spider-Man. I've heard a reference to it. I have really no idea what it's about, or I guess Spider-Man, I guess is what it's about. But the details of it, I'm really unsure of. But from what I had seen there, apparently it's, quote, infamous for bleeding money, delayed openings, and injured Spider-Man. That's kind of crazy. I mean, this shouldn't be the thing I'm hung up on, but injured Spider-Men, so there was multiple. I mean, I assume maybe they mean that there was multiple actors who are going to play Spider-Man, stunt doubles, whatever, So I assume that's what they meant, but I just thought that was interesting. So I know nothing about this. So I thought it was interesting that he claimed he was a producer for this, and of course, I think I had to say this, but the musical's producer denied Santos was ever involved. That's another quote from City and State New York. So I think the thing is with this, I don't really get the point of saying that you were a producer for something that I guess people didn't like. I mean, I don't know if it was meant to be he has experience in the industry or something and people should like that, but I don't really get the idea of saying you were a producer for something people weren't really all that fond of. Maybe again, I don't know if it was a means to an end, maybe. I don't know, but that kind of leads into the biggest point of this whole thing that I'll be getting into at the end there. But anyway, number 9 on our list is apparently Santos claimed he went to Horace Mann School during his first years of high school. And then according to the Intelligencer, there is no evidence he went there, and he later obtained a high school equivalency diploma. So that I just thought was a bit interesting. I think it's kind of funny that he claimed that just because I don't think a lot of people keep records of what high school you went to in terms of, the press looking into it. But I don't know, I guess maybe that was an important thing to mention. But he also claimed that he graduated from Baruch College. I probably said that completely wrong, in 2010. That's sort of interesting because I could be wrong on this, but I think his claimed birth year was 1988. So that would mean that. Oh no, wait. I was gonna make a point there, but I just realized I'm completely wrong. That he would have graduated at a time where he would have been too early to graduate college at his age. But no, I'm wrong on that. I probably should have put more thought into that one later. So, it could be possible that he went to Baruch College in 2010. But what was interesting was he later told the New York Post he, quote, didn't graduate from any institution of higher learning. So I don't know. I guess unless he did go there in Baruch College for whatever reason, doesn't count as an institution of higher learning, then who's to say, But that was, I thought, a pretty interesting claim to tell someone, so I thought we would include that. So number 8 is Santos claims his, quote, grandparents survived the Holocaust. Genealogists claim to CNN that, quote, there's no sign of Jewish and or Ukrainian heritage. And I thought that was a bit interesting because I don't know why you would say, I mean, this goes for a lot of these, but it seems like a really random thing to just claim. I don't know what the context was, but anyway, I guess they're claiming it didn't. And that's a thing where I kind of, in some ways, want to be a bit lenient on ones like this, where it's such a serious thing where, I mean, I don't think anyone can give definite, absolute proof if it didn't happen. I don't want to try to discredit him, but, I guess genealogists for CNN are claiming that it most likely did not happen. So I'm just saying what they said. That's a good point to emphasize. I'm just saying what they said. But this is related to I've lumped these two together because this is related to a classic George Santos moment that I think most of us know, which is Santos's claim of being Jewish and Catholic. And he said, quote, "I never claimed to be Jewish." That's something that the Intelligencer brought up, and like I mentioned, that's one that I think a lot of people are aware of who know of things George Santos has said, the Jewish line. But whatever, I guess we might as well mention that, just for the record. So number 7 is kind of related to that one, but Santos claimed 9/11, quote, claimed his mother's life because according to his campaign website, she, quote, was in her office in the South Tower on September 11th and passed away a few years later when she lost her battle to cancer. And apparently 2 genealogists found documents saying that his mother was in Brazil in September 2001. And again, that's the Intelligencer that brought me this information. Okay, maybe I won't mention every time it was them who said that, but for the record, that's another time that they had brought that up and tried to dispute what he said. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say tried because I think most people consider that having been disputed as far as they're concerned. So I guess my question is, what does, and this is what I was trying to say with the Holocaust one kind of, I don't think I phrased it very well, but the point of saying that is, one reason at one point I was almost inclined to believe him is, what does really saying that give you? What does saying that help you with? I don't know, is it people consider maybe pandering for votes? This is one I brought up 2 weeks ago when talking about George Santos a little bit. Is it supposed to be just an attempt to pander for some demographic? I don't really know what demographic would look at that and say, oh, well, now George Santos, he's the candidate. I didn't think he was before. Now he is. So, whatever. I guess it's just sort of interesting. And I think, I don't want to accuse him of anything, but assuming that this did happen, like let's assume for a second that when he said 9/11 claimed his mother's life, let's assume that was the case, and that's what happened. So from that point, when you say that, I think a lot of people assume that they mean that she died on the day of. And I don't want to discredit, because there are plenty of people, and it's sad, who just don't get the help they need from the health effects of 9/11, who were there at Ground Zero, firefighters especially. And I don't want to discredit anything that they've gone through. I mean, clearly, there are plenty of people who have died as a result of 9/11 as an after the attacks, but it's just, I don't know. I don't want to accuse him of anything, but I feel like he may have been knowing what that implies when he said it claimed his mother's life, but whatever, it's his story, it's his life. I won't tell him how to live it. So then number 6, this is a brief one, but I just thought it was interesting. I brought it up 2 weeks ago as well, which is according to the Intelligencer that he used campaign money on Botox. That's one where I just thought it was interesting because isn't that, I mean, maybe I'm just completely off on this, but isn't the stereotype that it's I guess politicians are celebrities, but Hollywood celebrities who use Botox? I was a bit surprised to hear that a U.S. congressman would consider using such a thing, but okay, I mean, whatever, if that's what happened, then that's what happened. I mean, and again, this is all from that ethics report, if I remember correctly, so, which I believe George Santos is just completely denying, so I'm not going to go into whether or not it happened, or I don't really want to go into that, but it's just an interesting claim to be making. So number 5 is that Santos allegedly lied to collect unemployment benefits, quote, accused of fraudulently collecting more than $24,000 in unemployment benefits in June 2020, while, quote, employed as a regional director of a Florida-based investment firm. And this is from the Intelligencer again. So this is true, that I was wondering, what did he really need the unemployment benefits for? Because I know not everyone working in something like an investment firm is rich or is extremely wealthy. I mean, everyone could use more money, I mean, unless you are extremely rich, which most of us aren't. I'm not. But, what did he need the money for? I was wondering. And it's something like that where it just makes me think, on one hand, I think it's kind of funny. I mean, it's number 5 on the list, so I think it's funny that this would be a claim being made. But at the same time, it makes me think, I mean, could it just be wrong? Could he have just not done that? Because that just seems to be something with just no motive to it besides just money, I guess. But whatever. I mean, that's number 5 on the list. Thought it was pretty interesting. Well, I guess maybe we'll find out one day if it's true. So number 4 is not necessarily a lie, because most of these have been what people are saying are lies that he's told or he's misled people on. But not all of them are lies. This is just something where I think it's more vague what this even is. I think, if anything, it's something he just admitted that he did, but I just think it's a bit interesting, which is Eula Rockert. I could be wrong. In fact, I I'm 100% wrong, however I say that. Eula Rochard, whatever. I have completely butchered that, and I'm sorry. Although I know that no one's listening to the actual program, so the likelihood that she's listening is zero. But anyway, she claims she was friends with Santos in 2005, where he, quote, was performing as a drag queen, and that he, quote, aspired to be Miss Gay Rio de Janeiro. So that's something where I just think about. I wonder, that seems to me that at first I thought, okay, that is just not true. I don't think, because, and I'm not saying that it's not possible, but I was under the impression George Santos was raised in America. At least I know he had Brazilian heritage. I believe that's what his main ancestry is. But I thought he was born and raised in America. So I think that's just someone saying something to kind of try to jump on what's going on with George Santos. But I started to think it's not, because first of all, there was the visual release where they claimed it was a photo of him back then. And so I think I've seen it before, and I guess it's up to interpretation what they think. But Santos said, however, quote, I was young and I had fun at a festival, which is his explanation for what was going on. He did feel the need to address that, but he did deny ever having been a drag queen. So that was something where I thought, oh, is there any validity to this? Is this something that could be true? Because it seems something that I wouldn't think he would feel the need to address at all if it wasn't. But I don't know. So I don't want to be one of those people where as soon as he addresses it, oh, well, then it's false. I mean, it must be true what's happening. It's wrong what he's saying. It's false what he's saying. But everything else is, true, completely true. But anyway, I just thought, again, not necessarily a lie, but more just something worth mentioning. So number 3, this is a big one. This is one a lot of people know of. Santos, as we know, became the first openly gay non-incumbent Republican elected to Congress. That is something that I think is worth mentioning in terms of that's not the entire fact. That makes it sound like I'm trying to dunk on him for a ridiculous reason. Like it is good for progress. Elect more diversity in Congress. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with that. So good, but something I thought was interesting was they mentioned, quote, and this is the Intelligencer again, quote, his campaign bio discussed his husband, but Santos never appeared on the campaign trail with his partner. Which, that's not unusual. Or maybe it is unusual for politicians, but I didn't think that was something worth ridiculing or making fun of him for, because, I just feel, if his partner doesn't want to make any appearances on the campaign trail, who's to say what they should do? So, whatever, and I won't shame him for anything. But what's pretty well known, this is the big one, Santos divorced a woman in Queens, and he acknowledged this saying, quote, people change. I'm one of those people who change. So that's something where I think it's more a best moment in terms of you'd think he would have mentioned that at some point. And I do, yes, people change. I don't think it's right to, slam people who are out of the closet as openly gay, and then if they had a relationship with a woman in the past or something, then, shaming them. Of course, it's the opposite. You should never do that. But I just think it's interesting that he would have never mentioned that in the trail at all. Unless I'm missing something, I don't believe he mentioned it. But I think it's just an interesting moment nonetheless to bring up there. So number 2, this is a weird one, but I think this is pretty funny, which is that a Wikipedia user by the name of, and this requires a bit of explanation, by the way, which we're going to, of course, give, of, quote, Anthony DeVolder, I think is how you say that, wrote on a Wikipedia user page that they met Hollywood producer Ling Q. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong too, but for what I'm about to say, they may not even be a real person, which you'll understand in a second. Known for producing Independence Day by Steven Spielberg. And by the way, that's their spelling, not mine. Steven Spielberg. And appeared in Hannah Montana. Also in 2009, he appeared in a movie starring Uma Thurman, Chris O'Donnell, Melissa George, and Alicia Silverstone in the movie The Invasion. I don't think that's even a real movie. I'm pretty sure that the movie is made up. So, what does that mean? Why do I bring that up? Well, Anthony DeVolder is apparently an alias George Santos has used before. So people are thinking that this is just a user page where he claimed these things about himself on a user page. And the reason this is the best moment is I'm not trying to stand up for George Santos so much, but the thing is, it makes me sort of think this could be a troll or something, right? Maybe it's just someone who's made that name, is just goofing around and claimed these things, but they might not even be necessarily related to George Santos explicitly. But it is interesting that whoever did this, let's take out the idea that it was George Santos. Made a user page for themselves and just made it like a normal Wikipedia, not a normal Wikipedia article in terms of it's not as well structured as a normal Wikipedia article nearly, but it's a normal Wikipedia article in terms of they just list like encyclopedic facts about themselves, what they're claiming of themselves. So, why? What did that do? Why would you make a page like that in the first place? And I like the idea that someone who had this sort of resume, who was in a movie starring, Uma Thurman and Chris O'Donnell, felt the need to make a user page where it's just a Wikipedia page for themselves. You would think that this sort of person would have their own Wikipedia page already. Apparently not, though. Apparently not. And the thing is, this could be a troll. I mean, George Santos has been known it's been known who he is for a while. It could be someone who's just trying to mess with him, or if not mess with him, just try to be funny. Okay, it is pretty funny. Whoever made that, even if it was George Santos, you have good comedic instincts, at least in my opinion. But I think it's worth mentioning that it very well could be him. There's no way I don't think there's any way to prove who it is or who it's not. I believe I read Wikipedia did not, and I got this from Politico, by the way. This is another one where it's not the Intelligencer. That Wikipedia apparently I think can reveal who certain people or give information on users. They have not for this person, and I don't blame them because it's really not all that serious. So I don't really think they need to. But I think it's interesting that this would even be a thing at all. But let's add to the list of possible George Santos lies. So anyway, or if not, well, not lies. I guess this one would be a lie. Just possible funny George Santos moments. I don't think he ever commented on this. And to be fair, I don't blame him because, if this is him, what do you say? Yes, I made that. If it's not him, what do you say? No, I didn't make that. You're supposed to show your Wikipedia account history. I feel like I'll give him some credit that you don't have to show this one. And so the number one George Santos moment of all time, in my opinion, is, and this is something I brought up 2 weeks ago. I can't help myself. I'm sorry. This had to be number one. I think we'd all know it has to be number one, which is allegedly making purchases on OnlyFans with campaign money. Yeah, I mean, I know I had mentioned this before, but come on, how do you not mention it? I mean, if this is true, it's, well, good for him. Good for him for making important purchases of that money. I mean, he's not running for re-election, so, I mean, I guess if he's gotten any money for a second campaign anyway, at least he might as well just use it on whatever he wants. I mean, I'm not saying do that. I'm sure that's it is against the law. I already know that. But, if it needs to be put to some sort of use besides just giving back to the people who gave it to you, you might as well use it for an important use there. So, maybe a bit of an anticlimax because I feel like the second one maybe was a bit funnier in terms of it just makes absolutely no sense at all. Just no sense what that could be, what that is, what that means. But that first one I have to put there just because it's iconic now. Everyone knows this. It's a fun fact. I mean, it was released in the ethics report that I believe is the reason this third expulsion vote is even happening. So it has to be included. Has to be included somewhere. So anyway, those are the top 10 George Santos moments, at least in my opinion. Submit your own list. No, I don't think there's any way to do that, but feel free to make your own list if you have one. And in closing, I just think this is the thing. I said this last time, but I have to say it again. These are the kind of claims that like Beetlejuice would make, where it's just you just ask him a question. I mean, especially that Spider-Man one. And I know it was number 10, but I know it wasn't as funny or interesting as some of those other ones. But because when you look at that, what other reason would you have to answer that by besides someone just asked, hey, George Santos, were you a producer for this musical? Yeah, I was, and that's probably not how it happened, but that is just something interesting. I think it's interesting because how else could it have happened? I am interested in that. But that's the thing about it. In a way, no, not in a way in terms of like, I can't understand why. I'm going to miss him, I will miss him. He made Congress way more interesting. I mean, there are plenty of people who just don't care about governmental affairs at all, who know who George Santos is. He made things a lot more interesting. There is no denying that. And without him, I mean, I don't know who can fill his shoes, who could possibly fill his shoes. But, I just wanted to say, George, you had a good run, and we thank you for your service. And, if you're like, I mean, I know that he's not seeking another term in 2024, but the governor's mansion is open in 2026 for New York. I mean, I don't know if it means the governor's going to run for another term, but there's going to be an election then. If you'd like to seek it, who's to stop you? So anyway, that's my list then of the top 10 George Santos moments. Hope you might have enjoyed that there. I just pulled it together today. I had thought about this segment for a while. I just pulled it together today. I'd completely forgotten, but I think that's a good list. So, I hope if you enjoyed it, then maybe you learned a few things about, as I called him at the beginning of the program, America's favorite congressman. And if you disliked it, well then feel free to make your own list and just have some fun with it that way. To kind of explain for a second, from my understanding, there is going to be what will be the third expulsion vote. Expulsion vote. I don't. It's spelled expulsion, but I feel like most people just say expulsion. Whatever. The third vote to kick him out from his tenure will be held tomorrow. And I'm gonna be honest, 2 weeks ago is when I last talked about this. And if I'm not mistaken, it was that day where the ethics report came out that a lot of people said kind of doomed him and made this an inevitability that would happen again. And so, because of that, I kind of expected this would happen earlier than 2 weeks after the fact, over 2 weeks after the fact. But I mean, I don't know. It took us, half a month to get a new Speaker of the House, the third highest ranking member of the government after he was thrown out. So, who knows? These things just run long for whatever reason. I'm done questioning it. But anyway, from what I've seen, George Santos has refused to resign, which, I mean, does make sense, to be honest. I mean, it's the thing is with this, a lot of people are trying to tell him to resign. I'm not really surprised he's not, because this isn't, Watergate or anything like that, where George Santos staying in office has any major consequentiality to the entirety of the nation. I mean, I'm not saying that one congressman doesn't matter, but the idea of whether or not he resigns now or later, I feel like is a bit irrelevant. I mean, it's really, I'm not saying don't follow this, but it's not the most important thing in the world. But I think the thing is that I have seen a lot of people call for him to resign, and I've kind of wondered why, because the thing is, if we look at through history, times when, and I guess this is the thing where mostly I can name presidents, but at least for things I wasn't alive for, but presidents were pressured to resign. I mean, one of the first examples would probably be Watergate throughout, I think it was 73, 74, when before he officially resigned, there was all these people as the investigation went on telling Nixon, he should save the country the embarrassment and just resign the office, which he eventually did, but just after enough pressure. And then it was obviously never to this scale just because he remained in office. But people forget that, in the beginning of the Iran-Contra scandal with Ronald Reagan in 86 and 87, there were some calls for him to resign, which obviously he got to remain in office and there was never any sort of impeachment vote. But, when you look at it, it's a kind of a thing where history glosses over something. It's not that no one knows about that, but I feel like, some people don't really, when they think of Ronald Reagan, his administration, don't really remember that as well. But there were times where that looked like it could be another Watergate, and it ended up not being. Ronald Reagan remained in office till the end of his term, but still, it's interesting to look back on that. But anyway, and then I feel like anytime there's some sort of presidential impeachment vote, there's some calls to resign, maybe not as major, but which would have been, 98, 99 with Bill Clinton. I'm sure there are probably some people who wanted him to resign just because in the case that he could just get removed from office. That seems to be something we don't want to have, like a piece of history we just don't want to have happen no matter what, even if it means resigning because of the inevitability of a removal from office. We just don't want to see that happen. And, it seems to me that makes sense. But every time there's some sort of risk at all that a president will be removed from office, there's some sort of call for the resignation. And of course, Bill Clinton remained in office. He was impeached but not removed from office, so he served the entirety of his term. And I feel like the thing is, every time there's some call, out of those three, the call just gets less and less to resign because Nixon actually did it. Reagan and Clinton both did not. But I feel like it was probably more prominent with Reagan. And again, these are things I wasn't alive for. But the reason is that I would assume that is because, although Bill Clinton was the only one who was actually impeached, I feel like the Iran-Contra scandal, I'm not going to get into that whole thing here, but seemed to be there were more accusations of serious wrongdoing on the part of the president because, I mean, really, what were people alleging Reagan did, or at least that his administration did in that scandal, which was sell arms to an enemy of the country and divert the funds to get to fund a group that Congress said the government couldn't. And that's a massive simplification here, but that's kind of what that is. What did Bill Clinton do that people wanted him removed from office for? And just him, not his entire administration, or at least people in his administration being alleged of it. He cheated on his wife, and that's something where I'm not going to get into whether or not people should defend that at all. But I'm just saying. In fact, I don't think anyone's arguing you shouldn't defend adultery, but that the fact that whether or not his impeachment was justified or not, but a lot of politicians have done that. So I think that's kind of part of the reason why just calls for resignation among presidents at least seem to die down every time there's some major scandal. I mean, depending on how major. And nowadays, I think ever since Bill Clinton impeachment has been thrown around and, debated, and there's been some sort of formal attempt to do it with pretty much every president. I mean, never like a formal attempt to where there's a serious vote on it in the House. I don't think Bush never had that. Obama never had that. But it seems that impeachment threats are just thrown around all the time with every president. So it seems to have lost a little bit of what it once stood for. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make with this is that this isn't that. I mean, George Santos, if he was never elected into the House, would things be really that different in the country? I mean, I'm going to assume probably not. We'll make an assumption, probably not. But anyway, moving on. I did see that George Santos apparently has recognized that it's probably an inevitability that he will be removed. I mean, that's something where those aren't his exact words, but he's acknowledged it's very possible it will happen. And so that was something that I said 2 weeks ago, I believe, because pretty quickly, I guess he came to the conclusion he thought he would be removed. And now it looks like that may be the case, so we'll have to see. Maybe he was right. I mean, it's very possible. But anyway, also, I read another news article about the situation, and according to CNN, Santos said that he will introduce a resolution to expel Democratic Representative Jamal Bowman of New York for pulling a fire alarm when there was not an emergency. And if you remember that this was from a few weeks, it wasn't even a few weeks ago, it was at least a month ago now, maybe even 2 months ago now, when there was that drama of Jamal Bowman, who's a congressman from New York. And again, I'm just saying, I'm not going to repeat the whole thing, I guess, but basically that, pulling a fire alarm when there's not an emergency. So I thought it was a bit interesting that that's a possibility to have that kind of resolution come up, because Bowman, from I believe the same article I read this, that he pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor charge. So I'm not saying that was not at all. I'm not going to get into that whole discussion, but clearly if he's pleading guilty to a misdemeanor, I don't think there are many people who are going to make the strong argument that, oh yeah, what he did was awesome. So I'm not going to defend that, but I just think it's interesting that, at least he's admitting to he did something wrong. From what I can understand, I don't think George Santos has admitted to anything that the ethics report has claimed that he did. Or there are some things where I think he's admitted that maybe he said something that was, unintentionally misleading or something. And I'm not saying he's never admitted to anything people claim he's lied about, but I think it's funny that from all I know, he's not admitted to, using campaign donations for OnlyFans, which is something he's being accused of. And by the way, I think I should make this point clear now, because he hasn't admitted to much of it. I'm just going to say, this is it. Other people are claiming this, and he has been accused of it. So, don't take me as, I'm not trying to break any ground here on saying what he has and hasn't done. I'm just saying, I don't know nothing about anything. So I'm just claiming what other people have said here. So the other thing about the expulsion vote that Santos wants to bring to the House is that those who are defending Santos, and there are some, even though there are a lot of Republicans who've turned against him, there are some who are still on his side. They say that this is too extreme a step for what he's being claimed to have done, or for what they are admitting they think he's done, to expel him from Congress. But I guess apparently pulling the fire alarm is not too extreme a measure. And I'm saying this in terms of, I guess this is all just me, like, using a straw man, if you want to call it that, because I have not seen anyone besides George Santos support this resolution. And I'm not saying they don't exist. There is probably there's 400 members of the House of Representatives. I'm sure at least one has probably said, oh yeah, he deserves to be expelled for that, about Jamal Bowman. But so I'm just saying right now that I have not seen any people who have said that they support this resolution. I'm sure they exist though, but I just think it's interesting that, I guess, I'll let you be the judge, and we'll get into some of it later, what George Santos has been accused of. But, what's more serious, what he's been accused of or what Jamal Bowman did? And that's the thing where, as well, some of it you just already know. Some of it is just so common knowledge at this point, stuff George Santos has said, that, I think that you can make your own judgment what's more extreme here. So, anyway, to be clear on my whole opinion on this thing, and I think I sort of said it in the last show, but I didn't really go into it. And I didn't know this fact at first. There's only 5 members of the House who have ever been expelled in history. And 3 for fighting on the side of the Confederacy, and 2 for being convicted of bribery. Well, one of them was among other things, but bribery was among both of them. And so if George Santos is successfully expelled, he will be the 6th. So I think because of that, and then also just because of the fact that he was already tried, I have said before, I don't really think it's necessary to bring this expulsion vote. And also in terms of that as well, he has said before, and he's not taking this back, he's not seeking another term anymore. He's done. This is the end of his political career. I think he's pretty much confirmed that. that this will probably be the end of, for now, his political. I don't think anyone should make any statements on what his future plans will be. But so for that, it's like maybe this expulsion vote. I'm not going to be one of those people who says, removing any member of the government is tearing the country apart because, I mean, he's not, like I said, he's not the president. He's not the vice president. He's not the speaker. So it's, I'm not going to say that for the good of the country this shouldn't happen, but maybe it's a thing to take a step back from and think about. But it's going to happen. I mean, I could say whatever I want. It's going to happen, and I'm not fighting against it. I mean, I don't think it's something where we need to all rally Congress because is it justified in terms of should he have been removed before? That's for your own judgment. So I think there is a genuine argument to make that I said in the last show that it's just kind of crazy he was ever even able to get into Congress. So make your own judgment if he should have ever gotten into Congress. But in my personal opinion, maybe we shouldn't have this expulsion vote, but what I say doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all on this whole thing. So I just thought that would be a good thing to mention because we're talking about a possible expulsion vote and just saying where I stand on this portion here. And so also, in addition to that, according to CNN, I saw that Santos has, he's spoken about this whole thing, which, I mean, obviously he has. I mean, this is talking about removing him from Congress. Of course, he'll have discussed it. And some quotes from an article I read is that he will, quote, have fun on the way out. And if expelled, he's promising to name names and blow the whistle on misbehaving members of Congress. So does that count as a threat? I mean, I was reading that. I was like, does that count as a threat? I mean, I think with some people, and I'm not trying to accuse them of anything here, you can kind of tell that they're not going to go down quietly. So I think that it's not really surprising you would say something like that, but does that count as a threat? I thought it was a bit ridiculous that he would say that before the expulsion vote has even happened. Like, oh, well, if I get removed from Congress, which is possible, things are going to get crazy. I don't know so is that supposed to be a threat that either he's trying to get people to vote against his expulsion, or is it a threat in terms of he just realizes it's inevitable, he's going to get expelled, so he's going to start throwing around things? And I thought it was a bit interesting that he's saying that in terms of does he think that, people don't know that members of Congress do like crazy, horrible things probably that we just technically don't know about? Because I don't think it's a secret at all. And I thought it was you're kind of, blowing your stack there a bit early. I don't know if it's a real expression, but I don't know. I thought it sounded like one. But you're kind of, getting rid of this whole thing too early because now that you're saying it, I mean, does that mean that if you don't get expelled, which is still a possibility, because I wasn't going to say this right away, but I guess I said in the last show, why didn't you get expelled before? I was shocked he didn't get expelled before. Well, I guess apparently you need a 2/3 majority to kick him out, which is the same with impeachment, which, okay, yeah, I should have realized that. That's my mistake there. I think it's kind of, you have to assume at this point you need a 2/3 majority to remove anyone from office. I guess except Speaker of the House, you can vacate the Speaker from their chair with less than a 2/3 majority. But it made me think, does that, I mean, if he doesn't get expelled, which is still a possibility, is he just going to keep quiet about this? Is that what he's saying? Because that's not really helping I know he wants to, I think he's more he's thinking he's going to be a hero because he's going to show all these horrible things members of Congress have been doing. He's going to prove it. But then at the same time, now it's, well, if he stays in office, well, I guess I'll keep quiet about it. So I feel like you might have made a mistake there, George. I mean, if that's seriously what your plan is. But anyway, I guess this was sort of a shorter segment talking about what's going on with George Santos, at least the first part. And the thing is that I saw one more piece of information that I found a bit interesting, and that was that, according to The Hill, Matt Gaetz said expelling Santos would do grave damage to the House. And I'm going to say right now, maybe that's not the absolute best person who could be defending you in this case. I mean, just because Matt Gaetz has been through his own share of drama, I'm sure that people don't need to question. I mean, no one needs to question that. But the thing is that really who you really want in your corner there, George? Like, I don't know. I think it's maybe a bit interesting to just think about, that's who he has with him. But I'm not going to question him if that's who he wants on his team. And it's not like he chose him out. And I don't think, from what I read, Matt Gaetz isn't necessarily defending what George Santos is being accused of. But it's just something to think about. Is that the person that you have on your side? What does that really say about the case that you're fighting in?